Hey, what's going on? Welcome to a special edition of the Dan Gheesling Podcast. Super excited today. I have my all-time favorite speedrunner on. He goes by Sinister1. Sin, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, man? I'm flattered to hear you say that. Things are going well, but yeah, I'm excited to be on the podcast. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. So for people that have no idea who you are, it's a very, very small amount of people, can you tell people who you are and what you do online?
Sure. I'm Sinister1. I'm a speedrunner, so that means I just try to play games to completion as fast as possible. Sometimes I like to do that with certain parameters or challenges, like maybe wearing a blindfold or doing a game pacifist where you can't use some of your weapons. Maybe doing, one player, two controllers type stuff. So yeah, that's what I do, and I stream it on Twitch.
Okay, and I would say most people, like, there was a moment in time, and it was like a massive moment that, like, when people think of you speedrunning, they talk about this moment. Can you talk about, like, I mean, it's like, and even the speedrunning community, I'm talking like all at Twitch during that time, it was like, if you were watching Agdq, awesome games done quick, you knew, you know.
Probably, yeah. I guess you're referring to Awesome Games Quick 2014.
Yeah.
And I did Mike Tyson's Punch-Out blindfolded at that event. That was a stellar event just all around. It was really a coming out party for the entire speedrunning community. It was the first time that Games Done Quick hit $1 million in donations. And I just so happened to get to play a really big run during that event. So it was pretty fortunate. But yeah, it was exciting. It was a pretty exhilarating experience. Like, for the people that were in the room, like, the energy in the room was just electric. And like, you can't hear it as well on the stream, but each fight that I won, because they had to be quiet so I could play, right? But in between fights, they would cheer, and it just kept getting louder after each fight. The volume just kept going up and up and up, and it was just like, it was so hype. By the time I was getting towards the end, it was pretty insane. All
right, so I'm going to be your hype man for a second. So for people who have no idea what we're talking about, can you tell people what Agdq is? So I have no idea what it is.
Yeah, so Games Done Quick is an organization that runs charity events that are all focused around speedrunning. So they'll do a marathon, which will be like a week-long event, 24 hours a day, and they just have people speedrunning different games throughout the entire time, and there'll be different donation incentives to get people involved, get them donating money. So for instance, my donation incentive was, instead of playing Mike Tyson's Punch-Out normally, to play it blindfolded instead. So people would donate, they want to see that, some kind of challenge or something like that. They'll put some extra money in toward the charity. They have events biannually. And in fact, last year they had 3 events because we had them out at TwitchCon, which was fantastic. So hopefully we'll be able to continue that in the future. But yeah, Summer Games Done Quick is coming up. That's their summer event, and that'll be toward the end of June.
So in terms of Twitch program, it's a really big deal. It gets a lot of viewership. It's a great cause. And I want to take one half step back one more time just to fully explain what's going on here. Can you explain to someone that has very little knowledge of what speedrunning is? Can you explain how that is to, like, someone who has no clue what speedrunning is?
Absolutely. So most games, at least retro games, and a lot of newer games as well, there's a completion point for the game. So any game that has a completion point where you've actually won or you finished the game or whatever it is, there's generally not much of a way to compete in that. So the way to kind of compete is to say, well, I'm going to try to play this game as fast as I possibly can. If you and I are both very good at Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, how are we going to compare who's better? So the way of comparing that is kind of like, who can beat the game faster? And it's usually pretty impressive. So, if you're somebody that hasn't seen speedrunning before and you watch some old game that you used to play back in the day, your mind is going to be blown. You're going to be like, whoa, I had no idea that could happen. Like, how did he just do that? So it's really just kind of an impressive way of playing games that are more about completion and not so much about, like, multiplayer interaction or stuff like that.
So to play a single player game in a competitive format that, everything is recorded and what I find, and I don't know about this, what I find fascinating, it sounds like the majority, like, so you do a run of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. How do you know if that's the world record? How is that recorded? Like, how is that process done?
So there's a great website, speedrun.com, and it's a repository. It has pretty much any game you can think of. There's over 15,000 games on there, and people are able to submit their times, and then for each leaderboard, each game has its own leaderboard, and those times are then verified by community members of that game. So if somebody submits a time in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, then there's a few people that would look at it and make sure, okay, hey, this is legit. And then it goes up on the leaderboard, and then you can kind of compare and see, where am I, where do I stand? It didn't used to be like that.
How did it used to be?
Well, it used to be that you just kind of had to scour the internet, and there really weren't that many people speedrunning. So, chances are you probably knew the like one or two other people that were maybe speedrunning your game. So you could kind of talk to them about what's your best time.
And I want to take like an even further step back. How did you first find out about speedrunning? Like, do you remember where you were, what you were doing?
Oh, yeah. I absolutely remember. A friend of mine was just showing me some videos on YouTube, and he was like, dude, you got to see this. This guy's going to beat Mario Brothers in 5 minutes. I was like, get out of here. Nobody's beating Mario Brothers in 5 minutes. And he showed me a video, and it was, of course, of Andrew Gheesling, who is one of the original Super Mario Brothers speedrunners. And this was back in like 2008, probably. So he was already beating Super Mario Brothers in 5 minutes, and my mind was just like blown by this. And I immediately, like after I went home, I'm looking up videos. I'm like, oh man, I got to look up all my favorite games now, and let me find these speedruns. And like, it was like a kid on Christmas. It's like opening up presents, because you don't know what's going to happen in these speedruns. You've never seen it before, and you see all these like tricks and glitches and cool movement things that they're doing, and you're just like, oh, this is so awesome. But the reason that I got into it personally is because when I went to go look up that Mike Tyson's Punch-Out speedrun, there wasn't any. Okay. So I was kind of like, oh man, that's such a bummer. That's one of my favorite games of all time. There's just, nobody can watch a speedrun of it. So I was kind of like, all right, well, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to get in there, man. So I was that guy.
So when did you first start speedrunning Mike Tyson's Punch-Out? So in 2008, you discovered speedrunning, and then like, are you jumping in the next month or?
It was probably like late 2008 that I found out about it. And then by 2009, I actually didn't start immediately with Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I started with another game that there was no speedrun of, which is Double Dragon 2: The Revenge. It's an old beat 'em up game for NES. Great co-op game, really fun to play with your friends. And there was no speedrun of that. So I actually did that one first, and then Mike Tyson's Punch-Out I did in 2010. That one I also started again. That Andrew Gheesling, that guy I just told you guys about, he played that game at the very first Games Done Quick marathon, which was called Classic Games Done Quick, and that was in 2010. And I remember, watching him play, and this guy was like a legend, right? Like he played probably 10 games. He probably did 10 speedruns in that event. He did Super Mario 1, 2, 3, like,
which is unheard of. I mean, most people specialize in how many games, or like can compete on like how many.
Right. Yeah. It's unusual that somebody be able to speedrun that many. But him and this other guy, Frezzy Man, this guy from Sweden, who is also another amazing God gamer. They both had like 10 games apiece. They basically carried that whole event. Like between these two guys, and I'm like in awe of these guys. But then it came time to play Punch-Out, and I saw Andrew G practicing, and I was kind of like, oh man, I think I can kind of do better than that. Like, I'm not that impressed right now. After seeing him play so many games in such an impressive fashion, Punch-Out was not his main game, so he wasn't kind of up to like a really high standard. So that motivated me. That kind of got me saying like, you know what? I need to get on this game. I need to get on this game and see what's possible.
Okay.
So I went from there.
And so, I mean, we're talking like 2010, you're talking early Twitch. Like, are you broadcasting these runs on Twitch? Are you just recording them locally? Yeah.
No, I was recording locally. I had a DVD recorder. So I would record all my runs to DVD. And then back then there was no speedrun.com yet. Twitch didn't even exist until I think 2011. So it was still Justin TV at that time. And I wasn't into streaming. There were very few speedrunners that streamed back at that time. It was just a handful. And I wasn't one of them. I didn't start streaming, I think, until 2012, actually. But I used to record these runs, and there was another site, this site called Speed Demos Archive. It's still up, but nobody really frequents it anymore. It's kind of a relic of days gone by. But the purpose of that site was so that people could share their videos. They'd be able to share high quality videos of speed runs. And so what you would do is, you know, if you didn't have a DVD recorder, if you recorded a VHS, you would actually send the tape to this guy, Nate, and he would convert it to like a high quality video to be able to put on the site. If you had a DVD recorder, then you could kind of do it yourself. It was really, it was a drag. You had to go through a lot of steps of ripping the DVD and then converting it and then this and that. Eventually it would become an MP4 and you'd be able to submit it to the site, and then it would go through a verification process where, you know, people would make sure it was legitimate, and then it would be on the site. But the purpose of the site was not like world records or anything. It was mainly to just like be a showcase of, hey, you know, speedrunning is this cool thing. Here's a really cool speed run of this game. It did happen that a lot of those runs happened to be world record, but it wasn't a prerequisite to getting your run on the site. So that's how it was back in the day.
Is there like a number one speed run, or like the first, you know what the first ever speed run was? Is there any documentation of what that was?
It's kind of hard to say, but I can say this much. I can say the first speed run that was ever on Speed Demo's archive was of Metroid Prime by a guy named Radix, who also owned and ran the site.
Okay.
And the site was preliminarily for Quake. People would put up demo files from Quake because you could replay those files on your own computer. So it was an easy way of people just kind of showcasing like, hey, this is a cool way to go through this stage quickly. But you know, the first ever non-Quake speedrun that was on the site was Metroid Prime.
Got it. And
prior to that, I mean, there were probably some other speedruns that were out there. I can't remember if this was before or after. There was a very notable tool-assisted speedrun by a guy named Morimoto, a Japanese speedrunner of Super Mario Brothers 3. And people didn't know that it was tool-assisted at that time, and I'll just explain really quick what that means. What that means is that it's being played through an emulator and recorded through an emulator frame by frame, meaning you can slow the game down to one frame at a time, which allows you to do things that wouldn't normally be humanly possible.
Got it.
So this is not like somebody speedrunning in real time.
Got it.
But people thought it was real back at that time. They didn't know the difference, and they're just like, "Oh my god, this is the craziest thing ever." But eventually, that all got sorted out.
Do you have any of those original DVDs of your first?
Oh yeah, yeah, I do. In fact, here I got a couple right here. Hold on. Here, I'm just gonna pull.
So for our audio listeners, a couple
random ones here. Oh, here we go. Yeah. TMNT4 world record, 1827. Also says punch out and test recorder. Hopefully you can see that.
Yeah. Is there any date on it? Do you have any idea did you date them?
Oh man, I don't know if I wrote down the dates. Hold on a second.
This is like a trip down memory lane for you. But those are like, if you're listening, I mean, they're in a drawer. Like you didn't have to get up and go to like the wine cellar to grab them.
Yeah, it was just all with all my gaming stuff is right here. Like I got, like I have this, a couple extra controllers, some games. I got my punch out gold cartridge, still in bubble wrap.
Nice.
This thing's worth some money, maybe like $200. Somebody gave that to me as a gift.
Explain to people what that is for, because Punch Out comes out in the standard gray cart. And,
yeah, absolutely. So the normal Punch Out. This is the normal Punch Out.
And have you always used that one?
NES.
Have you always used that one? That specific one?
Actually, so there's a funny story. We don't know that this to be true or not, but it is speculated. There are actually 4 different versions of that gray Punch Out cartridge. And it is speculated that a certain version has better luck than the other versions. So it hasn't been mathematically proven yet, but it's suspected. It's a suspected thing. So everybody gets that specific version of the cartridge.
So it's like,
so I have 2 of them. I have one that's a crappy version that I can never get good luck on, and then I have that one, which I'll.
How do you tell the version of the gray Mike Tyson's Punch Out cartridge? Like, how do you know?
So it'll say on the back, hopefully you can see there, or where is it should say next to that caution, it says revision A. So if you see that, also on the very front, there are some of these bullet points. it looks different. This like kind of these markings here, there'll be some subtle differences between them. So you can tell which are the four different versions.
So on the back, so revision A is the good one.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 4A, revision 4A or something like that.
And the other one's just like 3A, 2A, 1A?
I can't even remember what the other ones are, but yeah, you can tell there's something different about each one. And they're, but like I said, we haven't dug that deep into it.
Is that like inside community lore? It's like well known that that's a thing, but you're not sure if it's a thing.
Yeah. The way it started out is that, that my main competitor, in my estimation, would get significantly better luck than I would over a large sample size. This was over years.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, this, it can't be a fluke. Initially, I was like, oh, it's just a fluke. It's a small sample size. It's probably just my mind playing tricks on me. But eventually, over time, after like years of us both playing, and I'm like, there's one key character in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, King Hippo, and he requires a great deal of luck. And my competitor, Zallard1, he would always get like pretty solid or really good luck on King Hippo, whereas I would just get horrible luck all the time. And so eventually we found out about this version difference, and then
wait, like what was that moment? Like what was that moment? Like, so he, can you explain luck real quick? Because it's like luck, but there's a physical element, or programmatic element to it. Can you explain what that is?
Right. So there is in each of these older games and probably newer games as well. There's something that'll have a random number generator, which will determine certain actions that happen in the game. So with King Hippo, he needs to. There's two different styles of punch that he can do. One of them, he opens his mouth and you can hit him. The other one, he doesn't, and you can't. So the only way you can actually progress past this guy is if you get the luck that he keeps opening his mouth so you can punch him. And, that requires the random number generator to spit out certain numbers versus other numbers. So that's how it works.
So with you and Zallard, like when was like the usual suspects moments when you realized the carts were different? Like how did you even get to that conclusion?
Somebody else brought it up. Really? I think some viewer or something, because I would complain about it and jokes about it, and then eventually some viewer kind of like dug in and did some research and figured out like, hey, listen, there's 4 different versions, and he took pictures and showed the differences on the cartridges of like, okay, this is this version, this is this version, and I was like, all right, I got to get myself a version 4A.
That's crazy, but like, I mean, it's stuff like that you would only find out by diving that deep into the game. And I mean, because you're not talking, like you said, not a week's worth of data. You're talking like year, like how many years?
It was personal observation over a long period of time. So part of it had to do with he was also better than I was. I have to admit that. So that was a part of it.
Wait, you broke up for half a second. He was what?
He was playing better than I was in some regard, because actually when you do get the proper luck against King Hippo, you still actually have to be really fast. And I would say that his execution was just a little bit better than mine.
Okay.
So that also made the appearance of like, oh, he's getting better luck all the time, when in reality, it's like, well, part of that was because he played better. So,
But at this point, all variables have been removed as much as humanly possible to have an even playing field. So people that now get into Mike Tyson's Punch-Out speedrunning, do they know like, hey, they got to have a 4A?
They probably don't know. And even the guy that has the world record doesn't believe in it either, Summoning Salt. He makes really great videos on YouTube as well. World Record Progression is the name of his series. But he doesn't believe it. So there's a mixed sentiment within the community. Okay. That's why I'm saying it's not confirmed. It's not been proven. It's like you said. It's just that there's some lore around.
Yeah, and it's like
now in certain games, it is proven. Okay. In certain games, but that's more so for like you need it to do a certain trick or glitch. So like in the Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past or Donkey Kong Country, there are specific versions of the game where it's like, if you don't have that version, you can't do this particular trick. It just doesn't work.
Got it.
So that's more where it's proven versus this is kind of like a.
But if you're going to battle for Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and you look in your holster and it's not a 4A, you're not even going.
Yep, not even gonna play.
All right. So you start speedrunning Mike Tyson's Punch-Out in 2010. When did you figure out like, hey, I'm pretty good at this, and like this is you know, I got a shot to be the best at this?
It took a while because there was a guy. So Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Was actually a game that had a speedrunning community long before. There were, in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a whole community around the game. And there were two websites. So there was Game FAQs, which had a forum, and they would be able to communicate on there. And there was another site called Red Toms. And that is where they would keep their scores and you know, their times and the strategies. Because back then, there was no videos. I mean, there was no YouTube. This was like, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, you're not really uploading things on the internet very much, right? Unless it's something very small. So they would essentially, in order to verify that they had gotten a particular time, they would have to divulge the strategy of like, well, this is how I got the time. So they would kind of do this write up. And it was cool because they would come up with names for their strategies too, you know? It would be like the TKO from Tokyo for Piston Honda. And like, you know, they'd come up with these cool names for the attacks, like the Blinded Barrage and all this stuff. So there's a lot more creativity involved in it to kind of give it some additional flavor, since you couldn't actually see the video of it. So they had to kind of embellish other aspects, which I thought was really cool. So those guys had put it up a lot of good times, but their focus was on just individual fights only. Okay. Whereas in speedrunning, in general, you want to complete the whole game rather than just one fight. I mean, you can compete on one fight, but people want to see the whole game played start to finish. So the only guy that had done that was this guy named Matt Turk, and he was the best. And I don't think I actually beat him until probably 2012, I want to say.
Okay, and what was his time?
He had a 16:59, and that's the in-game time. So that's basically in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. After each fight, there'll be a kind of this blue screen that shows up, and it's, you know, shows you your time with some decimal points afterwards. You know, you'll be like 14.97,
which is incredibly useful for speedrunning, because no games really do like have that unless it's a racing game, right?
Yeah. A lot of games don't have in timers. So most of the time, people just time things in real time. They just have a timer that they use on their stream, and then, you know, they start the timer at the beginning of the run, they end it at the end of the run. And that's how that's how you calculate the time. Or in certain games, they will actually do frame counts. So they'll actually like do the frame count and then calculate what the time is from that, because those games like Super Mario Brothers, for instance, it's literally down to frames. I mean, the top players are apart by, you know, 1 frame, 2 frame, 3 frame, whatever.
And can you explain like what frames are for someone who has no idea?
Sure. So every game runs at a certain frame rate, meaning that's how many frames are displayed per second. So most NES games run at 60 frames per second. So that's how many images are being flashed in 1 second to show you the animation of, you know, movement in the game. So yeah, that's so 1 frame in a NES game is 1/60th of a second. So that's a pretty small increment of time.
Got it. So the guy's name you said was Matt Turk? Matt
Turk, yeah, he was the OG. He basically had all the records in individual fights, and he done this single segment run in 16:59. Which eventually I was able to beat. And it was almost like there was kind of like a mental barrier, you know? It's kind of like in sports where like there's sometimes a team will just always have this nemesis that they can never get past. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And it's like almost becomes like a mental thing of like, can we even beat these guys? And that's how I felt with Matt Turk. I was like, you know, can I even beat this guy?
So how close were you getting? Like within?
I was getting really close. I was in the low 17s for a long time. Until I finally, I think I got like a 16:58. I beat him by like 1 second.
Did that happen on Twitch, or was that private?
That was on Twitch.
Okay.
That was, yeah, I was streaming at that time. It was 2012 or 2013 was when that happened. I'm sure I still have the VOD somewhere.
And how many years did it take you to beat the world record at the time, do you think?
So it was a couple of years at least, because yeah, I started in 2010 and it wasn't until 2012 or 2013 that I was able to get to that level. And it's a pretty challenging game, and especially when there wasn't a whole lot of information on how to do a speedrun of it, I kind of had to come up with a lot of the stuff myself. I mean, I had some good starting points from those early days of the Punch-Out community, but again, a lot of those strategies were extremely luck reliant, so you couldn't do those in a run where you're trying to get from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, because you'd never get the luck that you need. It was like, 1 in a million. Punch Out happens to be a game where it's extremely luck based. Not every game is like that, but it's just to the extreme, where, in a given fight, if you want to get the fastest possible fight, it could literally be like 1 in a million luck. It's that crazy, for just one fight.
So when you're doing this for a couple years, like, how often are you playing this? How many runs are you doing a day? Is it like casual? Is it hyper competitive? Because, speedrunning Mike Tyson's Punch Out is not a full-time job.
It's not. I had a full-time job at the time, so I would do my off time. I would play a little bit at night or on the weekend, or whenever I could find time. But I was playing pretty regularly during those years. And I had other games that I played as well. So it wasn't like I was only playing Mike Tyson's Punch Out. I would take breaks and I would play, Ninja Gaiden or Batman or, Double Dragon 2 or TMNT 4 or whatever, So, but I was fairly focused on it. Like, I always wanted to come back to it. Each time I'd put it down, I'd always be like, I'm going to pick it up again. It's just a matter of time.
And so when you're doing this, you're on multi-years, you're playing the same game over and over, trying to essentially make every fight as perfect as humanly possible. Like, is there any point when you're like, I'm done? Or like, is there any part of like, put this thing down, or how do you combat that, or what's it like?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you definitely will get sick of the game at some point. But it usually has to do with if you feel like you're not making progress. That's when you feel like, well, what am I even doing anymore? It's like anything else in life. If you're just doing the same thing and you're not making any progress, then it starts to lose its enjoyment. Whereas, like, in Punch Out, even if I'm improving just a little bit at a time, like, it makes me want to keep going, because it's like, all right, I'm getting there. It's taking me some time, but I'm improving. I'm getting better. And that was always the case. I was always able to improve. And I can still improve, honestly. I'm not playing the game right now, but if I was, I could still improve my times.
All right, so let's fast forward to the big event. So 2014 Agdq. You had a couple events under your belt prior to this moment?
Yes, I was at every all the main games done quick from 2010, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So this was the fifth iteration of the winter event. And
at this time, did you still have the world record, or were you and Zallard kind of trading back and forth? Or?
Oh, that's a good question. Because we did start. I think I still had it at that time, and then he beat me like not long after, I want to say.
All right, so you're heading to this big event. Like, do you remember if you had the world record, or you're at 1 or 2? You're kind of going back and forth.
I believe I still had it at that point, and I think Zallard and I started going back and forth after that event.
Okay. So you go into this event. Do you have any inkling that it's going to kind of snowball or become what it's going to become? Like, do you know this event's going to be massive? Do you know that, like, do you have any inkling that moment is going to happen, or did it just happen?
Okay, so I did know that I could make it very deep in the game, because I had been practicing, and not on stream though. So nobody else knew.
Okay. Nobody
else knew how far I could get, and they were just assuming, because I had played the previous year and I lost to Piston Honda 2, which is the 7th out of 14 fights.
So this is a blindfolded run.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So that was the 2013 version. Okay. And so people would ask me during the week. They'd be like, "Oh, how far are you going to get this time? Are you going to beat Piston Honda 2?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I just played it down a lot. I was kind of like, yeah, we'll see. I'm just going to do my best. Hopefully, as long as I beat Piston Honda 2, then I did better than last year, and that's great." But meanwhile, in my mind, I'm thinking like, I got to go all the way to Mike Tyson. Like, I got to try to make this thing happen.
And prior to this point, publicly, had anyone seen Mike Tyson beaten blindfolded, or is it like in a small niche part of the internet it's been done?
No. And even in that event itself, I didn't beat Mike Tyson, but I got to him, which is what was that was the critical thing, was that, like, because it was so much further than the previous time. Like, it was, I went all the way to the end of the game, whereas I had only really gotten halfway through the game the first time. So even though I wasn't victorious in that year, it was still like a big deal. And no, nobody really knew that, you know, there was one guy actually that had put a video on YouTube of himself playing, and it inspired me because I didn't really take the blindfolded thing seriously. It was just kind of a gag at first, but this guy got inspired by watching me do it. And his name's Schmitty300, and he did a playthrough where he got all the way to Mike Tyson after several attempts. He like lost to Super Macho Man a couple times, had some other losses, but he got there, and I was like, man, you know, this guy is a relative newbie at the game in terms of his skill set. So if he can get that far, I have to get that far. I don't have a choice anymore. So I really pushed myself for that event, whereas in previous events, I didn't practice or prepare or anything. I just kind of was like, all right, put on a blindfold and play. But this time I was like, I'm going to be ready. And I was ready. So I didn't know that the event itself was going to be as big as it was. I knew that it was growing substantially. I mean, each year the attendees was like doubling, the amount of money raised was doubling, the viewership was going through the roof. But I didn't realize that was going to be one of the, like, to me, that's still the best Games Done Quick event of all time is Agdq 2014. So just take us to that moment when you pulled the blindfold down. Like, did you just phone everything else out and focus on the game? Like, how do you do that? And so to paint a picture, people have no idea. He's sitting in essentially what it is. It would be you know, a ballroom or a couple ballrooms open up in a hotel with just a huge crowd behind him. Yeah, it's a big ballroom. So it was the most crowded that I'd ever seen for any run ever. So I was already like kind of a little bit intimidated of like, wow, I didn't realize, because I mean, basically the entire event was there, and then they locked the doors. So unfortunately for some people, they had to like watch from this other room. There was this, I heard about this afterwards. There was like this other side room that was kind of like for, you know, eating, and they had the stream up there as well. So there was like a huge crowd in that room. It was standing room only in that room. It was like standing room only in the other room. And then there was a few other people that told me they were watching like all together in like another area.
Like, did you feel that at all, or were you just like, did you just go like zoned out?
Well, the great thing about being blindfolded is it really just helps you focus on what you can hear. You're not really thinking about what else is going on around you, because you're just kind of like paying attention to audio. So once I got started, it was fine. But after each fight, I'd kind of get that reminder of like, oh, there's a big crowd actually here. And then I think at one point they were like, you know, no pressure, but there's 90,000 viewers or something like that. I don't know, like on the Twitch stream. It's like, oh, you just had to throw that in there too. Sure, why not?
So you go through, and just to give you some context, you know, from my perspective, I'm a very casual like speedrunning fan, but when I saw that, like, they post the times and places, like, I put that in my Google Calendar. I'm like, there's no way I'm missing this. And I felt like for whatever reason, like, I think a lot of people did that, and then it started to build and build. So you go through, you run through it. When you lift the blindfold, like, at that point, like, what are you feeling when it's over?
I was just feeling ecstatic because I knew that I had made it as far as I wanted to go. I had basically achieved my goal. And even though I didn't beat Mike Tyson, I still hit him more times than I had ever hit him in practice. So that was like a personal best. And then I turned around and I felt like Little Mac, because anyway, if you played Punch Out, like at the end, like Little Mac he turns around to the crowd and like does a little, you know, arm pump and everything. And I felt like in that moment, that's how it was. Cause I like turn around to look at the crowd and everybody's like standing and cheering, and like, I was like, wow, this is kind of surreal. So it was a really cool moment.
And then when you walk out, like, when does it hit you that it was like the event, like the single, you know, and not take anything from anyone else running, but that was it? I mean, when you think about that event, like, that was it. It was on Kotaku, it was on all these press websites. Like, when did it hit you like, hey, this is maybe a little bit bigger than I thought at the time? I
mean, I think it actually hit me trying to leave the room. I couldn't leave the room. There's just like person after person was coming up to me and be like, that was amazing. That was amazing. Like, it probably took me 30 minutes to get out of that room. And then once I got out of the room, there was like more people that were coming from the other rooms that were watching. And then they were coming up to me. Like, I was just sitting in this chair for like 30 minutes and people were just like coming up to me. I'm like, this is crazy. Cause it's like, you're just playing a video game. It's just for fun. But like, so many people were impressed by it that it was just kind of like, okay, I guess that was pretty good.
So, I mean, it's safe to say when you started doing this, you know, on your own, like, did you in your wildest dreams ever imagine it would reach a peak or summit like that?
Oh no. I mean, I didn't even imagine playing in front of people at the time that I started. Like, that wasn't even something that I thought about. In fact, the very first run that I did, I remember I was like so nervous. The very first run at Classic Games Done Quick, the first live event, they were like, do you want a headset so you can do commentary? And I was like, no. I was too nervous. I was too nervous to even like talk. I just wanted to do my speed run and let the other people do commentary.
So when you walk out of this, like, do your friends and family, like, do they know what you do, or like, are they dialed in, or?
Pretty sure at least my parents were aware that I was doing this. I don't know if they actually watched in real time, but they probably watched like afterwards or something like that. Friends, not as much, maybe a couple, like maybe a few I told about. But yeah, no, they were like, oh, that was cool. You know, the ones that like the guy that showed me speedrunning, obviously I told him, obviously showed him about it.
And then to get some personal insight, like behind the scenes, like during this time, like are you working a full-time job and then running this, or what were you doing like for a job during this time?
Yeah. No, I was working full time, and you know, I had a girlfriend. Like I was pretty busy. You know, it wasn't something that I was just like. It's not like nowadays where people actually like full time streaming, and you know, they spent a lot of time into this. Like this was just strictly a hobby of, you know, this is something that I can do like an hour at night after, you know, after work or whatever. I can just do a little time here and there. Mm-hmm. So, but that was the mindset too. It was never something that I was thinking about, like, I want to do this all the time. I liked how much I was doing it, because I would get sick of it after, you know, if I played more than like 2 hours, I'd be like, I'm sick of this. I got to do something else.
Yeah. All right. So then fast forward a little bit. So you go from this moment, and then now you work for Twitch in the speedrunning capacity. How does that even happen?
Yeah, that's I never thought that was going to happen, because you know, it's interesting. I was actually planning on and had told a few people that, hey, I'm going to retire from speedrunning. I'm not going to speedrun anymore after this one event, which was I think it was Awesome Games Done Quick 2015.
Why did you want to retire?
I just, you know, I had kind of felt like, look, I've already done what I came to do. You know, I played a few of those games that didn't have videos. Now they have videos. I got to do the cool blindfolded thing. I participated in a bunch of these events. Like, it's time to just move on and do other things, you know, besides gaming. And, you know, so I was ready. All I wanted to do, I had one last piece of unfinished business.
Which was?
And that was, I needed to get the record back from Zallard one more time. I wanted to go out on top. I want to be like, okay, I got the record. I'm done. That's it. So I was like still playing a little bit here and there. And then I got a message from the guy that already worked at Twitch in the speedrunning capacity, which is Rom Scout. And he was like, hey, there's going to be this thing called Nintendo World Championships, and we're inviting some speedrunners. Do you want to play in this? And it's like, oh yeah, let me think about that for a second. Yes, of course I want to play in this. It sounds like the most amazing thing ever. So I went to that event. That was in 2015. That was in the summer of 2015. And it was a great time. It was really fantastic. And at that event, Rom Scout told me, he's kind of like, you know, hey, we're thinking about hiring somebody for speedrunning, because he was more focusing on like just charity events in general rather than just strictly speedrunning charity events. You know, he's like, would you want to work at Twitch? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. You know, I didn't really take him seriously. I thought he was just joking around, because he's a real jokester anyway. Like you never know when he's being serious.
Real quick, let me ask you, what did you play at the World Championships, and how did it go?
Okay, so that basically the format they had was they had some old games and they had some new games. So they would start out with like a newer game. Like the first game I think was Splatoon, because it had just released, and you know, so then they put us into teams and we had to play, and then like the people that didn't do as well on the losing team or whatever, they got sent to this thing called the Underground. And once you were in the underground, then you were at risk of elimination from the competition. And in the underground, you had to compete. So the first underground game was The Legend of Zelda, and they would give a task, like I think it was to beat the first boss. And so whoever won that got to advance. The rest, they were all done. And then they brought out another game, and then, you know, so on and so forth. So anyway, I finally get put to the underground, and you know, so I'm awaiting my fate. I'm like, all right, I'm probably going to go out. I never had any illusions that I was going to win this thing anyway, because I don't really play newer games. So I was like, I have no chance. This is just going to be fun. And the way they had it set up was they had this huge stage. It was in a big, you know, big arena. And we're on this huge stage, and there's this massive screen. It's just like, I don't know, it's probably like 20 or 30 feet tall. And you're just kind of like looking up, you're just craning your neck up at this screen because they're about to show the entire audience what the next game is going to be. And the screen is still black, but there's this bass drop that happens. And for anybody that's ever played Super Metroid, you instantly know that this is Super Metroid. And I just did like a full body, like fist pump. I'm like, yes, I know this game. I'm going to crush everyone. This is going to be amazing. And I was just super, super excited. So, but then they handed us, we had to play on these, the Wii U controllers, which it's like a, you know, it's like a thing like that. And on top of that, I had to play with the default button settings, which I was not used to. I was used to playing on Super Nintendo, and I had my own button settings. So I'm like, oh, now I'm screwed. Because I'm like trying to jump, and it's like not doing anything because it's the wrong button. So I had to like rewire my muscle memory to be able to jump. And I remember, you know, one of my friends was sitting with my girlfriend at the time, and she was like, what is he doing? Why is he just standing there in the lava? And he's like, don't worry. He's going to figure it out. Because I'm just like standing in the lava. Everybody else is playing and like progressing. And eventually I'm like, okay, all right, I got this. And then I did win that segment. So I got to survive another round, and then I got knocked out. But that was like just an amazing experience to get to play Super Metroid, which is like probably my favorite game of all time, on the big stage at Nintendo World Championships. That was awesome.
So you had your little Mac moment, then you had your dream game in an arena. And
yes.
Then you
I had some very good fortune. Yeah.
And then you have a guy that works for Twitch saying, hey, do you want to come work for Twitch in a capacity that doesn't exist yet? That just happens to be one of your favorite things in the world.
Yeah. And then so eventually what happened was he reached out to me again, and a couple months later, and he was like, hey man, are you going to apply for that job? And I was like, what job are you talking about? He's like, didn't you see my post on Twitter? And I was like, no, I didn't see your post on Twitter. And he's like, well, go look. And I posted the job there. And it was coming to close to the deadline, and they were going to cut off applications. So he wanted to make sure that I had applied. And
just for context, if you feel comfortable, what were you doing for your full-time job prior to?
Oh, so I used to work in mental health. I was a mental health professional.
Okay.
So I had a career. Like I was not, you know, this was not the kind of thing where it's like, oh, I'm just working at some job I don't really care about or anything like that. Like I was very far along in my career. So it wasn't like a no-brainer of, oh yeah, I'll just go work at Twitch kind of thing. But I was like, I can't hurt to apply, you know, may as well just throw an application in, sure, or whatever. So I applied, and then I got, you know, a phone interview, and then the next phone interview, and an in-person interview.
And like somewhere around, like during the process, are you like, oh, this could actually happen?
No, I felt, I mean, I don't want to sound too arrogant or anything, but after the in-person interview, I nailed it. Like I knew that I was like, they're going to offer me the job. I'm pretty confident. Because sometimes you just do really well in interviews. You know, sometimes you're like, oh man, I messed that up. Why did I say this? I should have said that. But that one, I was just like, yeah, killed it.
So you do the interview, you go home, you get the call, like, and you're like, yes, on the spot, or did you?
No, I was like, all right, I got to think about it.
And what did you have? You had to think about because you had developed your career, and you're like,
yeah, hey, I mean, I really liked where I was working. My boss at the time was like a mentor to me. Like I didn't want to just walk away from that. I had really good colleagues. I really cared about what I was doing. So, you know, it was not a no-brainer situation. It was actually a really difficult choice. And, you know, ultimately I decided that, you know, hey, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm not going to get another chance to work at Twitch, most likely. This is a community I care about. This is something I've been doing for a long time. I got to at least give this a shot and see where it goes. And, you know, the worst thing that can happen is if you don't like it, you can leave. It's a job, you know, you can go do something else. So I took it.
And what year did you get hired in at Twitch?
That was 2016, I want to say, is when I started. Yeah, okay. I think I started in February of 2016.
Okay. And like, what's your, I mean, you don't have to give us like behind the data or anything, but what's your day-to-day like? So you're in charge of speedrunning for Twitch. What does that mean? Like what's your day? Yeah.
Well, I mean, my role has kind of changed over time in some regards, but the basic premise of it is that speedrunning is an extremely large community. They're predominantly on Twitch. And there's, you know, a lot of interaction that needs to take place between the speedrunning community and Twitch. So I'm kind of that liaison between the community and between Twitch, and I can get things done internally, or, you know, I can help partners out or non-partners, you know, whatever, just anybody in the community that's trying to make something happen. I can try to facilitate that, or be a part of that. And, you know, that's more or less the role.
And on Twitch's side, they don't need to get someone to translate everything going on in the speedrunning community, because you understand that, because that's where you came from. Because it's not something that you can just jump into and understand the whole thing, but you have a scope of that because
right. Yeah, Twitch cares very deeply about like the communities and the members of the communities, and they want to have people. They hire a lot of people from communities, you'll notice. And there's a reason for that. It's because they want people that are experts. They don't want to try to be, like you said, they don't want to be trying to figure it out or whatever. They want somebody that knows what's going on, and that can communicate and be in touch with the right people and have a pulse of what's happening in those given communities, and can, you know, facilitate good things.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's like an organic, authentic fit for, you know, on both sides. I'm sure people are excited to work with you in the speedrunning community. They know you, they trust you. And then, you know, you know, so
right. Yeah, it's better than having like a stranger just reaching out to you in an email like, hey, I'm so-and-so and I work at Twitch, versus, you know, somebody that you know and you've been, you know, you've met at events and talked to and have, you know, some kind of relationship with, or at least have an idea of who this person is. Yeah.
So with your experience at Twitch, are you happy that you made the jump? Do you miss anything about your old job? Or, you know, as you've been there like 3 years, like, you know, I'm not going to put you on blast for HR, but
right. No, I mean, I think there's pros and cons to both. You know, no matter what job or profession or career that you're in, there's always going to be some element of like, yeah, these are things that are great, but these are things that I don't like. And then the idea of, you know, the grass is greener on the other side can happen anywhere. So, you know, even if you're happy in a job, like, you know, like Twitch or something like that, you're kind of always, you'll wonder like, well, but what if I had, you know, done this, or what if I do that or whatever. But I mean, obviously I'm happy there because I've stayed there for 3 years. And like I said, if I didn't like it, I was planning to just leave.
Yeah.
So that was the plan. But I think, you know, ultimately at some point I probably would return to my prior profession. I don't know when that's going to be.
Got it.
But yeah, I'm still passionate about that. Still want to be involved in that as well.
And to come full circle here, so you have not retired from speedrunning, because I watched you Tuesday nights.
Yeah.
And you run Rockman too. So you haven't, like, is there a reason why you've delayed hanging it up, or like? Are you back in
well,
it?
I think once I took the job at Twitch, then it kind of necessitates being part of the community. It's not like I can just be like, well, I'm not going to speedrun anymore, but I'm going to do all the, you know, speedrun stuff. So I think it's important to still be a part of the community in an active sense. You know, I don't want to just do it in a passive way. And I moved on to other games too. That helps. You know, so you're playing other games and doing other stuff, and I can come back to Punch Out later if I want to. So can
you speedrun from Twitch as part of your job, or is that not, you can't do that in normal workout?
We do have, I haven't done it before, but we do have some stream setups in the office.
Would that count as working for you if you were, I mean?
No, that would not count as working.
I mean, it's worth the shot.
It would, I wish. Yeah, I wish. That'd be great. Yeah, then I would just be streaming all the time and nothing would ever get done. But yeah, no, that doesn't, I mean, it's obviously it's there because, you know, they want people to be able to stream and have fun and do that. I mean, the Twitch office is amazing, for anybody that hasn't been there. There's all kinds of games and stuff to do. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, I have one left field question for you, and then one final question. My left field question is, and you have a post on your Twitter. It's the pinned one, and it's of you like 10 years ago versus you now. And they have a huge physical difference. Like, how much weight did you lose, and then what sparked that to like? I mean,
okay, sure. So I lost. It was around 70 pounds, maybe even a little more. And what sparked that was, I was working somewhere and they kind of had a free, like they had these people come in to do like a free kind of health evaluation thing or whatever. And they did mine, and it was just bad. It was like your cholesterol is high and you're overweight, or I can't remember what they didn't say that, but they're
like your BMI or whatever.
Your BMI is higher than the average range for your age or something, whatever. They put it in nice terms, but if that thing was a test, I definitely got like a D or an F on that. And I said, okay, no more, because I used to be in good shape before that too. I kind of let things go, and I decided it's time to make a change, time to be healthy again. So, and
then what did you do? You don't just like snap your fingers and then wake up the next day and like, or was it like that for you?
That's what I did. Yeah. No, what I did is at first it was primarily just getting back into working out regularly. I was very fortunate. The place that I worked actually had a nice gym at the facility, and they also had an extended lunch break because they would close for about an hour and a half during the lunchtime. So I actually went to the gym 5 days a week during that time. Okay. And it was very convenient. Like all I had to do was, just go downstairs. And after that, I had kind of gotten into good shape, but my eating habits were still poor. I was still eating like Five Guys and ice cream and just whatever junk. So eventually I actually changed my diet completely. So I actually don't eat any processed sugars.
Which is
like,
what? Which is like, explain that, like what's a processed sugar?
So I would say actually any added sugar. Okay. So any food that I eat is not going to have sugar added to it.
Okay.
It's just going to have, if it has some natural sugar in it, that's fine. But if it has sugar added to it as an ingredient, then I would not eat that.
Okay. Like ever, like birthday cake, nothing. Like do you ever?
Nope.
Never.
I mean, I ate fruit.
Yeah.
Like when you stop eating like processed sugars or added sugars, you'd be amazed how good fruit tastes.
Really?
It tastes so good. So, and especially I live in California, so we have pretty good produce out here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's something that, for anybody out there, if you're trying to lose weight or trying to do something like that, like that change will make a drastic difference, like a massive difference in your life. So if you're just going to do one thing, you don't even need to exercise. I'm serious. I'm dead serious. If somebody wanted to lose weight and they just cut out sugar completely, they would lose a ton of weight.
Is there anything you cut out that you were surprised had processed sugar in it that you didn't think would have, or someone would think doesn't have sugar?
Everything. If you go to the store, like anything that has ingredients on the back, there's going to be processed sugar in it for like 90% of the stuff in a store.
So you just eat like raw stuff, like, and you don't eat.
I just make all my own food. I cook all my own food, so I get whole foods. I just get meat or fish or vegetables or whatever. I cook stuff myself. So I know what's in my food. I mean, I'll eat out from time to time. So I'm sure there's been times I've had some kind of a little bit of added sugar, but I try to avoid it for the most part. But yeah, that's how I avoid it. And you have to read the packaging, because there's like probably about like 100 different names for sugar. It won't just say sugar. It'll be there. I'm telling you, man, there's, it's glucose or fructose or, cane sugar or cane syrup or this or that, whatever it is. Like,
did you learn about that somewhere? Because you seem like very knowledgeable. Like, did you dive into like a documentary, or do you just learn over time? Like, is there something you'd be like, hey, if you want to know about sugar, this is what I did?
That's a good question. I mean, I've been to some things that had information about it, like trainings and stuff like that I got more education on it. But it just in general, like, yeah, you could probably find, I'm sure there's documentaries out there that are good about that. I'm sure I've watched one or two. I can't, none of them really come to mind.
Yeah.
But I'm a strong advocate for it. I would say it's definitely worth it. and it is possible. It is doable. This is coming from somebody that used to be like a complete sugar junkie, sweet tooth. Like I ate, everything, brownies, ice cream,
I was
donuts,
gonna ask you if
cookies, like anything.
I was gonna ask you miss it, but
I loved it.
You don't seem like you miss it, like at all.
Every now and then. Yeah. Every now and then. I mean, I like that's that's one thing. So I work at Twitch, and they have quite a lot of sugary goodness there. And there's one thing, they have fresh baked cookies every day, and people just people go crazy over these cookies. Like people are just like, oh my God, these are the best cookies ever. They'll bring like 5 of them to their desk. They're just like going through cookies. Like, it's pretty intense. So I'm always like curious. I'm like, man, I wonder if those cookies really are that good.
All right, cool. As we wrap things up here, there's a young Sinister1 listening right now and wants your best advice to start speedrunning. What one piece of advice would you tell that young Sinister1 or whoever's listening back? I want to speedrun this game. What's your best piece of advice for them?
Best piece of advice is pick a game that you really love. That's it. Make sure it's a game that you love. A good soundtrack helps too, because you're gonna be playing it a lot. So you want to make sure those tunes are keeping you feeling upbeat when you're having a reset.
All right, Sinister, thanks so much for coming on. Where can people keep in touch with you, and when do you broadcast so people can tune in and watch you?
So I am at twitch.tv/Sinister1. That's the number 1. And I'm usually broadcasting on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, starting between 7 and 8 p.m. Pacific. I also broadcast on Sundays in the afternoon around 2 or 3 p.m. Pacific, and that's co-op. So yeah, I get a little guest action on my stream. My buddy General Andrews and I were speedrunning some Chippendale Rescue Rangers, which we will be playing at Summer Games Done Quick 2019.
Nice. So is that the only game you're going to be speedrunning there?
That's the one.
No Rockman 2?
No.
All right, cool. Sin, thanks so much for hopping on, man. I really appreciate it and wish you best of luck, and looking forward to watching you shatter the record for Chippendale's Rescue Rangers at the next Agdq or Summer Games Done Quick.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me on. This was great.
All right, man. Thank you.